Alright everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is the Jordan Report, and I'm your host, Robert Jordan. Please like, subscribe, and share. It's very important. Alright, I'm going to do a story on Bernie Sanders. Because Bernie's back in the news, and since, Biden is fading, it looks like it's going to be between Bernie and Elizabeth. So Bernie, I'm sure, will be soon approaching the black voter. And since this channel is dedicated to the political education of black people, I want to give you a little story and get you out ahead of Bernie. Because Bernie is not telling you the truth about himself. He has a history. He's almost 76 years old. I don't know his exact age, but he's up there. And he has a history. And so let's just go and explore a little bit of his history. I got a couple of articles, and then I'm going to end it up with a short clip of Bernie in Russia. Okay, and so this is I'm gonna go to this article here. It starts with this one actually, and it's about a kibbutz. Bernie lived in Israel in 1963. A kibbutz is like a communal living type place. It's like a communal form where everybody gets a job, everybody gets a small salary, everybody's assigned to do. If you know what communism is, that's what this is. Okay, but he stayed at a different type of kibbutz. And that's what these articles about. This came out in his earlier run, 2016. This is February 5th, 2016. Bernie Sanders, 1963, stayed at a Stalinist kibbutz. Now, if you don't know who Stalin is, you probably should turn this channel off right now because, you just Google in Stalin. And it is sometimes maintained that Bernie Sanders can't be as anti-Israel as some of his positions would indicate, because he spent time on a kibbutz there. After all, this is a guy who in the January 17 Democrats presidential debate said, "I think we have got to do is move as aggressively as we can to normalize relations with Iran." And who wanted to deny weapons to Israel prior to the Yom Kippur War in the 1970s? These positions are actually quite consistent with the politics of the kibbutz Sanders chose for his time in Israel. Daniel Greenfield of the Front Page magazine has the story. Now listen, guys, this is very important because of the things that Bernie is doing today. Okay, he has a history, and he still maintains what he believed from his earlier days. This is 1963. In 1963, Sanders had told Yossi Melman that he had been at a kibbutz, can't pronounce it, as a guest of the Hashomer Hatzair youth movement. Israel had all sorts of kibbutzim affiliated with various political movements. Hatzair was one of about as bad as it got. Kibbutz, whatever that name is, had been co-founded by Aaron Cohen, the Arabist who was a regular critic of Israel and opponent of its policy. Okay? Aaron Cohen, the Arabist who was a regular critic of Israel and opponent of its policy. You see why Bernie is so anti and always critical of Israel? He was arrested for spying for the USSR in the 50s. Other left-wing groups described them as Leninists and even Stalinists. Okay? As late as 1969, well after Bernie's 1963 visit, remember what I'm saying right here because I got to go back to, there's a point here I'm going to go back to remind you of this. As late as 1969, well after Bernie's 1963 visit, dissent was described in Hashomer as Stalinist. This was after he's gone. It was Stalinist after he was gone. It means he was Stalinist while he was there. Western lefties with their Hashomer Hatzair background included Noam Chomsky. For those of you who know Noam Chomsky is, he's a writer. Okay, Chomsky wrote that he was fairly close to the Hatzair, but couldn't join because it was split between Stalinists and Trotskyites. These are hardcore communist people. Okay. Kibbutz was in fact part of the communist organization and support system dedicated to the triumph of communism under the leadership of the Soviet Union. Its founder, Hazan, described the USSR as a second homeland and eulogized Stalin, writing how shocked he and his comrades were to hear the terrible tragedy that had befallen the nations of the Soviet Union, the world proletariat, and all of the progressive mankind upon the death of the great leader and extolled Commander Joseph Stalin. We lower our flag in grief of memory and the great revolutionary fighter, architect of socialist construction, and the leader of the world's peace movement. His huge historical achievements will guide generations in their march towards the reign of socialism and communism the world over. Hashim Amar, whatever his name is, the movement's paper had a headline which read, "The progressive world mourns the death of Stalin." This is Bernie Sanders' kibbutz. This is his roots. This is his political roots. This sojourn in Israeli kibbutz, communist kibbutz, is fully consistent with Sanders' honeymoon visit to Soviet Union, where Paul Rand quipped he stayed with his visit to Nicaragua's Sandinist revolutionary leader Daniel Ortega as the first U.S. elected official when he became mayor of Burlington, and his 1980s visit to Cuba, where he met the mayor of Havana. So far as I know, Bernie Sanders never repudiated his Stalinist inclinations. Okay, that's Bernie's basic roots. He comes from this Stalinist background. Okay. Now this is the article is related, and then I'm gonna get to a quick clip of Bernie in the Soviet Union or in Russia, and so but this story here is related to the last one because they're reacting to the story that I just read you. It didn't take long for news broke that Bernie Sanders had volunteered, and I don't know how they figured out the same date. These two articles were printed on the same date, but this is a reaction to the one I just read you. It didn't take long after the news broke that Bernie Sanders had volunteered decades ago on a hard left kibbutz in Israel for right-wing critics to start lobbying ever scarier objectives, adding, remember, this is before the election. This is during the election. This is 2016. So this is during the election cycle. The Democrat candidate's stint at kibbutz, can't pronounce it, in northern Israel proves conservative that he isn't just a socialist, but a hardcore Marxist, or even a Stalinist, far outside the American mainstream. Bernie Sanders' 1963 stay at Stalinist kibbutz was the title of the leftist piece on the site American Thinker. I just read you that. The description seemed damning, especially from the perspective of more than 50 years since Stalin's death and the world's absorption of the reality of his murderous, dictatorial, anti-Semitic regime. Yet at the time, as the two right-wing websites point out, Hatzer, the kibbutz movement that Shar belonged to, had quite a different perspective. On the day of Stalin's death, March 5th, 1953, the front page of Hashimar, the movement's newspaper, carried a photo of the Soviet Union leader under a full-width headline, "The progressive world mourns the death of Stalin." I just said that. Bernie Sanders wasn't there because he liked Israel. Hashimar did not like Israel and ultimately wanted to destroy it. Okay, these are the pictures of the kibbutz. Now I'm going to just finish this up real fast and then show you a clip because I want people to know this, because a lot of us don't know anything, especially black Americans, and like I said, Bernie will be approaching us looking for his vote. We won't know anything, most of us, about Bernie's past. Most of us don't know anything about the Soviet Union, communism, or the foundation of Israel. This is where Bernie gets his political education from. Okay? Sanders' time on the kibbutz, where he lived for a few months with his ex-wife, is referenced in virtually every profile of candidate. But Sanders' campaign has been tight-lipped about the name of the kibbutz, leaving journalists in Israel and others U.S. searching fruitlessly for months. It was only on February 4th that Millman, a longtime Israeli national security journalist, unearthed a 19 interview with the candidate in Israel, Haaretz newspaper, which he revealed the kibbutz in question was this kibbutz. All right? So I just want you guys to pay attention. I'm going to leave a link to both of these articles. Please share them. Pass them around. All right. Now, this is the point I was trying to show you at the last article. By the time Sanders arrived at the kibbutz in 1963, the kibbutz had cooled greatly on Stalin, but was still a socialist haven, practicing communal sharing in almost all aspects of life. But it was fair to assume that Stalin's photos no longer adored the communal dining room. The Internationale, a renowned workers' anthem, was still sung at the kibbutz and youth movements many decades later. So they're saying that it was a Stalinist kibbutz when he was there and after it was there. All right. Bernie's a Stalinist. That's his political background. I'll leave you the link, and I'm gonna leave you with this with Bernie singing. And also, let me be honest here. Bernie was the mayor of Burlington, and the title of this is Burlington Soviet Trip. This was June 13, 1988. This was an official visit from one sister city to another. Bernie was the mayor of Burlington, Vermont. So he was visiting his sister city. This is not a honeymoon, which is what a lot of people are saying. There's Bernie with no shirt on. That's his wife talking. They've been doing a lot of drinking. Look at all that booze. All right. Bernie's coming for you. I just wanted to give you a heads up. Do your homework, people. If you don't know anything about communism, if you don't know anything about Stalin, if you don't know anything about Trotsky, do not vote for Bernie Sanders.